Hi everyone, hi animals. And today we're looking at can a cow lead the revolution? What do you think? We're living in a time when the neoliberal hegemony is drawing to an end. We're facing the end of lifestyles that we have known within a relatively short time. We've got catastrophic climate breakdown, with biodiversity Armageddon, peak water, peak topsoil, you name it, it's all happening. Weather patterns everywhere are disrupted, everything. It's all happening around us now. Technology isn't going to save us. Nuclear, wind, and solar are not going to save us. Fake notions of sustainability, or I heard somebody say luxury communism, are actually not going to save us. It's going to take a lot more digging deep until we can basically save ourselves or just go under. We need, as human animals, to take a long, hard look at ourselves and our lifestyles individually and collectively and decide how to move forward. And today I'm talking about taking inspiration from animal resistance. Yes, as vegans, very important to listen to and observe and learn from other animals, I think personally. So I'm Pamela from Animal Justice Emergency. If you find value in this content, please feel free to like and share and sub. So this book that I'm reading at the moment, Animal Resistance in the Global Capitalist Era by Sarat Colling. I'm now on the second chapter. And these cases of animal resistance I'm finding increasingly fascinating and thought-provoking. And I think they offer inspiration and energy for us human animals to see what other non-human animals have done in life-threatening, horrendous circumstances. These animal persons who literally took a giant leap of faith into the unknown in order to escape from certain death. Persons like 2-year-old Emily, who was a cow being led to her death in a slaughterhouse in 1995. This is in Sarat Collins' book. Quote, after witnessing her fellow bovines disappear one by one, Emily made a quick decision that changed her life. She leaped over a 5-foot gate and absconded into the woods. Beyond ironically, the daughter of the slaughterhouse owner gave her her name, and very tellingly, the local media took an interest. So there you have, that's why we're reading about her now. A network of sympathisers began leaving food for her in the woods. Quote, Emily endured the winter snowfall and freezing temperatures with a herd of deer with whom she began foraging. She eluded humans for over a month until she was befriended by a couple of humans who wanted to give her sanctuary. And they befriended her, and they took her to Peace Abbey, which is a multi-faith peace and learning centre for children with disabilities and also contains other non-humans. And she died there at the age of 8. And then her caregivers commissioned a life-size statue, which is on her grave, alongside statues of other peace activists like Maya Angelou, Gandhi, and John Lennon. So, in its own, that story is one animal escaping. But I think if we look a bit deeper, there are lessons that we can definitely learn. That's what I feel. You let me know what you think. So, what can we learn from Emily? So, she was a relatively inexperienced bovine. She was 2 years old. And her short life had been one of coercion, confinement, forced pregnancy, and betrayal and pain from human animals. But despite all this, she was able to recognise when she was literally at the gates of death of the slaughterhouse that she was in absolutely shocking danger. Was it the smell of the blood or the loud screams of the other cows? Or the terror of the cows in front of her, who presumably could see perhaps a bit more of what was happening? We don't know what exactly it was. Could have been her personality. Maybe she was a more reactive sort of cow. Some people are more reactive personalities. we do know that she made a snap decision. Now, some people will say, okay, well, this is instinct, and that's instinct. No, but if it's instinct, surely you would have like bundles of cows leaping over the fences at the slaughterhouse. And the fact that it doesn't happen to bundles of cows, but it's probably a lot more common than we know, it's not just quote unquote instinct. Emily actually made a decision. She used the opportunity, she gathered her knackered body and made the leap over the fence to an unknown freedom. She didn't know what she was going to face, but she knew anything was better than what was in front of her. Now, once outside, she didn't just stand around like a lemon, waiting to be sort of caught. No, she understood that she needed to get as far away from the slaughterhouse as quickly as possible. She spotted the woods as a likely refuge and ran into them. She didn't amble, she ran. And then, while she was in the woods, she met and hung out and foraged with a herd of deer. So these are animals presumably that she'd never met before. Had she ever seen deer? But she somehow recognised that they had some sort of affinity for each other. So she foraged with the deer and ate the hay that was left out by the human sympathisers while enduring this freezing weather and snow for 40 days, which is quite a long time, isn't it, for a young cow on the run, basically. Particularly when you think of her previous life, she had very little agency, probably absolutely very, very little control over anything. She was hardly being called upon to make sort of like decisions, big decisions, life changing decisions as a captive being. And yet she was managing to do all this when she was in a situation that she was absolutely up against it. So she had this capacity. And eventually she decided that she would trust the humans and was taken to Peace Abbey. So, what can we learn from Emily? I think there's 5 or 6 things that we could learn from the whole sort of like Emily experience. And they're important things. First one is correctly recognizing a life threatening situation as such and taking extreme and effortful action to change that situation, even when we have no idea of the outcome or consequences. In Emily's case, it was leaping over the 5-foot fence. She didn't know where she was going to land. In our case, it's facing the sliding into disarray of our current lifestyles, basically. The second thing that we can learn from Emily is that understand that one action is not enough. We need to make a continuous effort, spotting the woods as a likely sanctuary and hiding there. It wasn't just a one-off thing. She was making these evaluations on an ongoing basis. The third thing she did that I think was really key was finding some allies. Enough like her, but not necessarily the same, a herd of deer. She recognised them as potential allies. Maybe if there'd been a pack of wolves, it would have been a different story. Maybe not. Who knows? Animal cooperation is a thing, but I think it would have been probably a bit more dodgy. Anyway, the fourth thing that we can learn from her is adapting to new realities and learning new skills. The new realities in Emily's case were snow, freezing weather, and foraging for food and hiding. There are so many things that we need to learn in order to be viable beings in our new future, or to have any future. And the fifth thing, 5, that we can learn is taking the time to evaluate new situations, not diving in. So when the human beings were approaching Emily over a period of time, they wanted to befriend her, but she didn't really know and she didn't trust them. They were just people, and she didn't know them. And hi Bob, and there's Bob evaluating the situation. The only thing that she knew, the only experience that she'd previously had of human animals was betrayal, pain, and taking her babies away. So she took her time when these nice people, who she didn't know were nice, tried to befriend her. And then the 6th thing that she did that we can learn from is deciding to accept what seemed like a viable offer of help. She figured out that the people were probably trustworthy, and she went with them to the sanctuary. So, as human animals, we're now facing the breakdown of the realities and lifestyle that we've grown to know and somewhat love. The neoliberal extractive paradigm of consumerism, endless growth, and exploitation is, as I've said, and I continue to say, and many other people say, is coming to an end. It's falling to bits around us. We need, like Emily, number one, to recognise that we're facing a life threatening situation. And by we, obviously, it's ourselves personally, but particularly people in the global south or people on the margins anywhere. You know, look at what's happening in India with the whole COVID situation. Horrendous. Life threatening situation. Happening in India with the whole COVID situation. Horrendous. Life threatening situation. Second thing that we need to do is to take extreme effortful action with no certainty of success to have a chance of survival. And I think this is, a lot of people sometimes say things like, oh, well, we need to hope. I don't think we need to hope so much. I think we need to sort of take action and we're not be so invested, this might sound bonkers, in the notion of success. Because, you know, we can sort of try, but we just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we never do. It's like crossing the road. We can try, and we would expect to get to the other side, or perhaps we hope to get to the other side, depending on the drivers, but there's no guarantee. And the third thing that we need to do, like Emily, is embrace a new lifestyle, find new allies, and learn new skills. And this will not happen overnight. This will take time. And this is not about being quote unquote, sustainable and plastic and stuff like that. This is about a fundamental change in the way that we relate to the world, to other beings, to the biosphere, and the actions that we take that will impinge on our future and the future of everyone else. We need to seek out allies. And the allies thing, I think, is really complicated because, it's just, particularly I think in the vegan space, I personally find it very confusing. You sort of think, well, we're all vegans, everyone's great, that's the initial thing. And then over time, you sort of realize how broken up and divided it is. And then you start to think, well, maybe outside of the vegan space, there are people with similar sort of like values, and perhaps they could or could not be veganized, or perhaps we can all work together somehow. I think it's a challenge that we all need to be thinking of, really, this finding of the allies. Maybe it's more of a sort of a personal thing. I don't know. We need to take the time when we see new opportunities. We need to take the time to evaluate them before committing our time to them. So, yeah, not just be tempted by what seems like an amazing opportunity. And finally, we need to, I think, humbly remember that for every Emily who made the break and escaped and survived, there are hundreds, thousands, there could be tens of thousands, there could be hundreds of thousands of other non-human beings who attempted to escape but who didn't survive and who didn't find sanctuary. So often those stories seem to end in the murder of the escapee. And so often we don't know the stories because the media didn't take an interest, or non-human animals are deemed to be so, worthless. But they tried, they resisted. And some succeeded and some didn't. But they all matter. They all matter. And that's what I'm finding from this book that is so interesting. It really helps to give me personally an insight into the agency of other animals. More and more as I investigate these things, it's like layers of sort of like recognition. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And if you made it this far, thank you. If you found some value in this, please feel free to share with a friend. I'm just saying, thank vegan, it's Friday. You have a great rest of the day. Have a great weekend. This is Pamela from Animal Justice Emergency. You take care, and thanks again. I think Bob is trying to send us a message of support. Bob? Yes, Bob says resistance is everything. You take care.